Hi, I'm very happy to welcome you to this talk about improving the bootstrap of blind equalizers with the Variational autoencoders. My name is Vincent Lauinger. I'm from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany, and this was a joint work together with Fred Buchali from Nokia and Laurent Schmalen. The motivation for this talk is the great demand for blind equalizers, where saving the data rate can increase FEC overhead or data throughput. Modern equalizers, they have to be flexible and adaptive, and they must support higher order modulation formats and probabilistic constellation shaping. The state of the art is the constant modulus algorithm, the CMA, or its derivatives like the radius-directed equalization, the RDE. And the CMA is ill-matched for higher order modulation formats and probabilistic shaping, and the RDE has worse convergence characteristic at startup. And the focus of this work is the bootstrap. And this is the initial startup stage until equalizer taps are adjusted sufficiently. And typically the CMA is used for bootstrapping and then it's switched to the RDE. However, for instance, for probabilistic constellation shaping or singularities, the CMA can be prevented of convergence. Recently, a new or novel equalization method, the variational autoencoder-based equalizer, has been proposed, and I won't go too deep into details now. I'd like to refer to our journal paper here, but I will give a brief overview, and therefore let's have a look at a quite standard transmission system where we have a transmitter, a channel, and an equalizer. And the equalizer output can be used for further processing and finally can be input into a soft demapper, which outputs soft values correspondingly. And the equalizer and the soft demapper can be together seen as a decoder. And as the name implies, we also have an encoder. Here we have let's say virtual encoder at the receiver. And then we end up with the loss function, the so-called elbow, which consists of basically two terms, B and A. And A is a Kullback-Leibler divergence, which is a measure for similarity of two densities. And this tries to shape the decoder output similar to P of X, which is the a priori distribution of the transmitted symbols. So here we can introduce probabilistic constellation shaping to this algorithm. And B tries to match the equalizer output to the received symbols. This is an ML approximating receiver where phi corresponds to the equalizer weights and the decoder output corresponds to a joint equalization and soft demapping and can be used in conjunction with soft FEC. And I want to highlight that this is a blind approach, meaning that we only need to know P of X, so the a priori distribution, but we do not know the exact transmitted symbols. So here in the loss function, we only need to know Y, so the received symbols. And for this work, we implemented two variants of this variational autoencoder, the VAE batch and the VAE flex, which both consist of the of a classical butterfly structure with learnable FIR filters, so a classical linear equalizer block here, and a map and maximum a posteriori based soft demapper. The equalizer tabs are updated batch-wise via an atom optimizer, and for the VAE batch, the batches are basically consecutive. So here we see the received symbol stream or samples, the received samples, and this is the first batch. The next batch will be like the consecutive and batch symbols. And for the VAE flex, however, we have a flexible step length, meaning that instead of stepping by n batch, we step by a smaller length, in this case, for instance, 2 samples. So we have an overlap. And here, for instance, Y3 and Y4 or Y5 and Y6 are overlapping. And as a reference, we implemented CMA-based equalizers. which are basically state-of-the-art blind equalizers for optical communications. And here we have the same linear equalizer block and softy mapper, but we also need a carrier phase estimation block, for instance, a Viterbi algorithm with sufficient averaging length. And since the CMA itself is phase insensitive. And besides the classical symbol-wise update of the CMA, we implemented also a CMA batch as in this reference, and then correspondingly we also implemented a CMA flex for a fair comparison. And for our simulations, we transmit 64 QAM through a linear dispersive optical channel, where we simulate static polarization rotation, so an HV shift, polarization mode dispersion, and residual chromatic dispersion, as well as we added white Gaussian noise. And our transmission parameters are a symbol rate of 100 gigabaud, a differential group delay, so a PMD of half the symbol duration, an HV shift of 0.2 pi, and basically the values of a standard single mode fiber. We plot the bitwise mutual information, which in our community is also sometimes referred as the generalized mutual information, the GMI, over the uncompensated fiber length. And we see that the VAE-based algorithms outperform the CMA-based algorithms. And if we look at the failed runs, we consider a run as failed if after a certain time a certain BMI threshold is not reached. So in this case, a BMI of 5. And we see that the algorithms basically perform quite similarly. Besides, the CMA batch seems to be a little bit more resilient towards chromatic dispersion. And if we look at the mean index of convergence, which basically is the time instant when this BMI threshold is reached, we see that the VAE batch and the CMA take a bit longer, while the other algorithms, they really converge quickly. And as I said, probabilistic constellation shaping is an issue for the state-of-the-art algorithms, for the CMA-based algorithms. And so here we look at shaped 64 QAM with an entropy of 5.73, which is, I would say, not the strong shaping. We see that the VAE-based algorithms, they still approach basically the maximum of 5.73, while the CMA-based algorithms already show a significant penalty. And if we look at the failed runs, we see that the CMA-based algorithms, they really struggle to converge at all. So in 50%, or in at least 50% of the cases, they fail, while the CMA flex is always failing. And on the other hand, we see that the variational autoencoder-based algorithms converge reliably until a certain chromatic dispersion. And also, if we look at the mean index of convergence, we see that the algorithms now take a bit longer, but the VAE flex, in fact, still converges quite fast. And another critical point is polarization rotation, so an HV shift of pi/4. In this case, or for this simulations, we also increase the differential group delay to the symbol duration and use a uncompensated fiber length of 1 kilometer. And especially if we look at the failed runs, we see that the CMA-based algorithms really struggle around this point of pi/4, of an HV shift of pi/4, and we see that the VAE-based algorithms, they in fact are not really affected by the periodization rotation, so they reliably converge. And if we look at the at this specific point of pi over 4, and here we plot the BMI over the frame index, which basically corresponds to the time. So here we see the convergence behavior, and we see that the VAE batch takes some time, but then converges rapidly, while the CMA-based algorithms, they started at a higher level, but then converge not that fast. So in fact, the VAE batch converges even before the CMA-based algorithms, and the VAE flags even converge much faster. If we look at the batch runs, we see that for the CMA, there are some runs which don't converge at all, while the VAE based algorithms may take a bit longer, but always converge. So this brings me to the conclusion of this talk. And in this talk, we compared the Bootstrap characteristics of different blind equalizers. And especially we showed that the widely used CMA fails to start up for critical working points, and that, generally speaking, a batch-wise update seems to be advantageous also for the CMA. And as a take-home message, I want to give you that the novel VAE-based equalizers, they reliably start up still at this critical points, also for probabilistic constellation shaping, and the VAE flags is a fast converging alternative. So thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions or any remarks, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you.